second-year master's students. Odds are I'll probably talk about Ohio State football. I'll probably talk about horizontal convective rolls, and we'll see what else happens. So this is a nice picture. Just to start us off, my buddy Scott and I went up to the Lion Shrine earlier this week and had to get our picture. We tweeted at Desmond Howard and Church Street, hoping that they might respond and get dinner with them or something. No cigar yet, but we'll see what happens. So let's go ahead and get started. What I kind of like to do with these briefings is just kind of go to social media, because hashtag weather Twitter is a really good way to kind of collect some information. So just a couple of things that came from Twitter this week that I thought were pretty interesting. This is David Roth, meteorologist, with a preliminary rainfall graphic from Harvey. So you can see, obviously, the swath of rain down here over Houston, just all kinds of rain. So if we zoom in a little bit farther, you can see many areas kind of in this darker blue area are getting anywhere between 15 to 25 inches of rain. Zooming closer, you end up getting 40 to 45 inches of rain over the course of, 4 or 5 days. It's just unbelievable totals. We zoom in even farther, and you can see here in the Houston metro area and areas just kind of surrounding the Galveston Bay, plenty of contours, kind of these yellows and pinks. Yellow is 40 inches and higher. And so you can see here just unbelievable amounts of rain. It's kind of crazy to now put this into a map and really see the magnitude of this particular event. In terms of its spatial extent, we didn't see a whole lot of widespread rain, but with it being so focused, Houston really was kind of the victim of unbelievable rain totals that hopefully we won't experience again for quite a while. The other big story for this past week was Ophelia, which was a hurricane. Then it underwent extratropical transition, was kind of picked up by a cold front, and then became kind of cool seclusion, as opposed to that warm core that it was previously. So let's see if these links will work the way that I expect them to. Just scratch that here. See it.
Might have opened an Internet Explorer.
Internet Explorer. Oh man, what a pleasure. It's waiting. Just trying.
I think this can link you to a browser.
I should have opened these up beforehand. Here we go. Maybe. So what this is going to show us is some of the sea foam that was brought up on shore with Ophelia in Ireland. So let's see if this will now play for us. Okay. All right, well that's not gonna work. So let's try the other one and see if that one will work more efficiently. I'm gonna copy this one in to our kernel web page. Let's see. Going. So this should be another loop. So you can see Ophelia here in the bottom left of the screen. It is warm core at that point, and then as it gets picked up by kind of this trough system, this frontal, this is kind of the definition of extratropical transition. So what happens there is you have a warm core associated with the hurricane, and then as it gets picked up by kind of this frontal zone area, it ends up getting cut off and kind of having this cold front and then some associated stationary front off to the north. Ophelia brought plenty of flooding, winds and rain to Ireland. It's been pretty interesting to see how the Atlantic prevailing direction of these storms has now completely changed. It was just continually kind of coming up along the Gulf Stream here on the eastern coast of the United States, and now we have, instead of these cyclones propagating from east to west, now they're going more west to east, just because the dominant high pressure system has been over much of the east coast over the past couple of days. So Ophelia is certainly very interesting, and just wanted to also show you guys, see if I can find the proper link here. So this is looking at Europe. So Ireland's right here. And you can see as we click through, this is for, I can pull this up real quick. So this is Thursday. So this morning at about 8 o'clock our time. As we click this thing through, we can see that the GFS, for what it's worth, is forecasting another big low pressure system to, I don't know if we can call it make landfall, because it's not really going to be a named system, but certainly going to bring a lot more unsettled weather to Ireland heading into this weekend. So kind of a week and a half or so of really unsettled weather in Ireland, and something that they may not be used to. I think this time of year it tends to be pretty cloudy and cool with plenty of rain, but certainly not the magnitude of these particular systems. I think that's all I have from, oh, you guys are waiting for it. Now we can talk about horizontal convective rolls. So this is the stuff that I'm researching. I've been working on a project with Dave Sinzer and Matt Cumgen, looking at these horizontal convective rolls. So they're a clear process. This was actually radar imagery from Monday here at State College. And actually, I haven't even looked today. There probably are rolls that are showing up on radar today. When you get this high pressure, sunshine, some light winds, you tend to get these kind of counter-rotating circulations. And you can see the linear features on radar are indicative of where those updraft circulations of the horizontal convective rolls are happening. The wind, they tend to be aligned approximately with the mean wind direction. And what we've been looking at of late has been differential reflectivity. So you can see this is a plane position indicator, or PPI, kind of the traditional two-dimensional view that we see over radar. And differential reflectivity gives us an indication of kind of the shape of the scatters or kind of the behavior of the scatters. And what we're seeing here in this outer ring, this kind of blue region where your GDR is near zero, that's what we call drag scatter. And basically what drag scatters is just picking up on the gradient in temperature and moisture associated with the top of the boundary layer relative to the free troposphere. And so if we can picture this, as a radar beam moves out from the radar, it's kind of going up. And so this area right here is a little bit lower than out here, so we can extrapolate the height. And we see through the afternoon that this ring tends to expand, characterized by kind of a deepening of the boundary layer. So what we've been working on over the course of the past couple months has been making plots that look like this. So on the left here, we have a quasi-vertical profile, as we call it, basically time across the x-axis and height across the y-axis. We're trying to map this area of drag scatter, which we believe is characteristic of that boundary layer depth. And so the white line here represents the algorithm that we've created to kind of automatically detect the minimum in that ZDR. And then you can see as this goes through the day, around sunrise, the boundary layer starts to deepen, right? As more sun is basically warming the surface of the earth, you tend to get rising motion in the boundary layer and it deepens through the afternoon. And on the right here, we have vertical profiles associated with an upper air sounding. So this happens to be in Albany, New York. And you can see vertical profiles of N, which is refractivity, theta, potential temperature, Q, the mixing ratio, and then theta B, the virtual potential temperature. And basically what happens is when you have these sharp gradients in each of these variables, that's associated with the top of the boundary layer. So when meteorologists identify with this SQT, they look for these gradients. And as you can see here in these two images, this is the same exact day, we found pretty good consistency between the ZDR region of planetary boundary layer depth with the SQT, and we're in the process of writing up a paper. This could be a pretty big deal because currently we have like 80 different upper air sites that launch twice a day. That's pretty much the extent of our boundary layer information. But what we found is these radars across the country at all different times of the year could be useful in identifying boundary layer depth, and this information can then be used instead of just having 87 locations really once a day in the afternoon. Now we can have the wide array, like 120 different radars that are operating continuously, being able to feed in this information. So some pretty exciting stuff we've been working on so far. If you ever want to talk about horizontal convective rolls, I will probably be glad to talk to you about it. And if you watch Weather World, I tend to mention it quite a bit on there as well. So let's go ahead and now talk about some interesting weather, as it were. Not a whole lot going on in the Atlantic currently, so we then turn our eyes to the Pacific. We can see here Typhoon Lan, L-A-N, I think that's how we say it. And you can see it really nicely there on radar here out over the Pacific Ocean, kind of just east of the maritime continent. And it's expected over the course of the next couple of days to continue moving north. It's a little bit hard to see here, but there is a front that's going to be moving off the coast of China. And this is also going to undergo extratropical transition as it moves in to Japan over the course of the next couple of days. So the Himawari satellite has always been wonderful. Now that we have those, we also have the ability to see this really high-res information. It is nighttime over there right now, so we're just looking at kind of this enhanced imagery. Unfortunately, we don't have a visible satellite. You can see at the start of this thing, there went the sun, and it's now on our side of the world currently. Tropical Tidbits is a really good website. I love looking at this for any and all tropical activity. And so you can see here, we can click on the satellite. See if the flash will work here. It should. while that's loading. We can take a look at some of the forecast information as posted here by Levi Cowan. This is 1, 2, 3 on. All right, so taking a look at some of the GFS ensembles, basically. So you can see the GFS tends to be pretty under-dispersed, and what that means is basically there's not a lot of spread in the track of these particular different runs. But as you can see over the course of the next 72 to 96 hours, it's expected to, in fact, hit Japan. It is forecast to kind of intensify a little bit more to what would be considered Category 4 and then weaken a little bit to more of a Category 3 as it makes landfall heading into the weekend. Expected to, because it's undergoing extratropical transition, move some of the stronger wind fields, but under extratropical transition, we tend to see an expansion of the wind field. So probably quite a few areas are going to be getting some pretty strong winds, maybe it's not as intense or focused in that central region for this particular storm. Let's see if this interview will, yeah, it did not, so we're gonna not worry about that right now. CMC ensemble is showing a pretty similar characteristic, so keeping an eye on that. We have 26 out here, another system that the Joint Protection and Warning Center is keeping an eye on, but at this point not expected to do a whole lot. So that's what we have for the tropics currently. So I talked about Ophelia, that's the other kind of international thing that happened this past weekend, and that low pressure system is going to be making kind of landfall over Ireland this coming weekend. But now we can kind of transition back to the home front. And the big story for this week has been boring weather. The past couple of days, there's been plenty of talk about how pretty much Florida and part of the Pacific Northwest were the only places that had any sort of clouds or precipitation over the past couple of days. So it's been beautiful here. I particularly love this weather. It's been nice sunshiny days, cool mornings, and for us, we're expected to kind of stay in that regime for a while. As you can see, there's not really any dominating systems over the course of the continental United States right now. A little bit off to the northwest, it's a little bit harder to see in this image, but you can see there's a big, pretty hefty low pressure system that's going to be currently bringing some treacherous conditions to parts of Canada and the Pacific Northwest. That is expected to bring some snow across much of the Pacific Northwest over the next couple of days. And then eventually that's going to be our system that's finally going to change things up a little bit for us as we head into next week, bringing quite a bit of a cool down. So we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. Looking at our radar imagery, you can see the Pacific Northwest is getting out some of that rain, the rain bands associated with that low pressure system off the northwest of the United States. Some scattered showers here across Florida, and then just kind of a weak system here across Texas and into New Mexico. As you can kind of see, I don't know if it's actually going to show up, but you can kind of see this burst, especially I think I saw it right here as this moves through. This kind of burst of clear air scatters, that's usually characteristic of a deepening boundary layer. So you may see rolls as you look at radar today. For anybody that's interested, kind of going back to your radar scope, if you go to the differential reflectivity in the dual-pole products and click on tilt forward, I would expect on a day like today, pretty much anywhere you look, you're going to be able to see that ring of blue. That's 0 ZER region. So if you're interested in checking that out, it does happen pretty commonly, and certainly something that may be interesting to you guys over the course of this afternoon, or really any day like this when it's nice and sunny. So now we can look at our surface map. So Weather Prediction Center does this kind of schematic surface map. You can see high pressure dominating pretty much all of our weather. Forecast for some rain, thunderstorms associated mainly with sea breezes here over Florida. Kind of an area of broad unsettled weather here, as we focused on earlier. And then there's that low pressure system that's expected to kind of batter the Pacific Northwest over the course of the next couple of days. Forecast for some rain and snow. Let's see, the winter weather graphics. This is basically the probability of at least 4 inches of snow. So for today, just some pockets, but as we head into tomorrow, you're looking at Idaho being having at least a 70% probability of at least 4 inches of snow. So I think this is a pattern we're going to kind of get into a little bit more. As we see the pattern's going to start breaking a little bit more. It's not going to be this persistent weather. We're going to have kind of this more baroclinic pattern, basically, where we have some fronts moving through and more changing weather, and that's usually associated with some of these stronger low pressure systems that are finally going to break the persistent pattern we've had over the course of the past couple of days. Just kind of big picture, looking at the way that our fronts are expected to move. I don't love the way that they analyze these things, but just in terms of kind of orienting ourselves with what's happening, we're going to take a look at this. So heading into the weekend, high pressure for the game on Saturday, pretty much parked right over Pennsylvania. So Saturday should be an unbelievable day as far as football is concerned. And then heading into next weekend, they kind of have these like dual cold front systems that kind of move through. I'm not sure that's actually how it's going to turn out, but ultimately what that's going to mean is there's this big pocket of kind of this continental polar air, or really even Arctic air that's going to be moving into our area, cooling us down quite significantly as we head into the later part of next week. We've been in this really warm pattern with very few breaks in that warmth, and we're expecting over the course of really heading into the middle part of next week to have quite a bit of cool down, which is going to be very different from the patterns we've had over the course of the past really couple of weeks. Taking a look at some of our model information, we'll go ahead and take a look at the ham here on the E-wall, just to kind of give us an indication of what the weather we're looking at. This will zoom out just a little bit so you can kind of see this. So temperatures in the top left, you're going to have precipitation in kind of the top right and the bottom right, and then these stream lines indicating kind of the general flow over the course of the weekend. As I flip through this, focusing on these right two panels, you'll see that precipitation is going to be hard to come by. It doesn't look like the bottom right panel is floating up. I guess it is a little bit. There's literally no precipitation. So this is heading all the way into Monday. The weekend's going to be just magnificent. I mean, the biggest story, I think, maybe kind of the winds are going to shift direction just a little bit. Big deal, not going to be anything to worry about heading into the weekend. You can also take a look at some of the models. So Pivotal Weather is the site that I prefer. There we go. So looking at the GFS, just want to look at, let's go ahead and just look at the mean sea level pressure and the 10-meter wind. Again, just to get a bigger picture idea of the prevailing patterns that we're going to be expecting heading into the weekend. So high pressure over the southeast is going to just continue to even intensify heading into the weekend, getting up to 10.5 millibars, pushing 1030. That's going to mean plenty of subsidence and seeking here, even clouds, I think, maybe a little bit hard to come by as we head into this weekend. And then heading into the longer term, we're expecting, again, more of the same, but then Tuesday we start to get this kind of more trough flood pattern that's going to bring us a little more significant rain. You can see that general trough that's going to be analyzed, and heading into there on Wednesday, that trough, that low pressure system is going to move up to our area, and then the air mass behind it is going to be significantly cooler. Maybe putting this a different way, we can take a look at even just the precipitation type and see what kind of precipitation we could be expecting over the course of the next couple of, into next week. See what this will load up for us. Let's see here. Clicking through, so still high pressure, no precipitation really anywhere. So that's good news for this weekend. And then heading into, so now there's that cold front that's going to be associated with quite a bit of rain. Precipitation forecast we'll look at in a second, but this is probably going to be a pretty decent rainfall. I don't think it's going to be quite reminiscent of October 22nd of last year. You guys remember that area just to the north, we got 7 or 8 inches of rain overnight, led to the flooding of the pumpkin chunkin. I'm hoping that will happen, it won't happen this weekend for anyone that's going out to watch pumpkins get chucked into the lake. But certainly heading into next week, we can see some decent precipitation. And then behind that, we're going to be much cooler. I think the best way that's going to really describe our weather pattern over the course of the next week and a half are these temperature anomalies. So keep in mind that as we go through the period, the average high in the temperatures continue to drop off. And so even though we may continue to be above average by 10, 15 degrees, 2 weeks from now, it's going to be quite a bit cooler than it is right now. So for now, you can see where we were seasonable this morning, and then this afternoon we're pushing up into kind of above average conditions. I apologize if this is flipping through nice and slow, but Friday afternoon looks to be just nice and warm again. Temperatures probably pushing up into the low to mid 70s. And then for the day on Saturday, more of the same. So 8 o'clock Sunday, or 8 o'clock Saturday night for the start of the game. I'm not going to say you can wear shorts to the game necessarily, but it's not going to be necessary certainly to wear a winter jacket or anything like that. So I would expect game day to be packed. I think all of downtown is going to be just nuts with how nice the weather is. So if you're not interested in going to game day, stay with your downtown. If you want to, get there early and enjoy it. it should be a really, really fun weekend, I think, for Penn State football. Heading into next week, now as we take a look at kind of the temperature pattern shift. So you can see here that we're still above average behind this particular system, but the important factor is this is in the morning. Because there's a lot of clouds here, the lows are just going to be a little bit warmer than we expect. There's still a very significant temperature gradient associated with this, and we're going to really see that pop out as we head into the day on Tuesday. Still getting more back to seasonal type weather, but then behind that, we really start to funnel in much more of this cool air heading into the later part of next week. So I think average high this time of year is somewhere around the low 60s, average low somewhere around 40. And so we could be seeing highs in the 50s heading into the later part of next week. For those of you that have been missing fall, certainly something to enjoy. But I think this is more going to be what we can expect moving forward. Less of this warmth and more of these cool shots. Now this is getting far outside what we can actually be able to predict accurately. But this particular model is showing another coaster kind of firing up out ahead of another cold frontal system. So again, this is really far out. We can't really play any value in this particular forecast, but this is picking up on the fact that we could do more of this type of pattern with the temperatures. So some warm followed by some really much cooler weather filtering behind it. More unsettled, more precipitation, more active weather, I think, is something we could expect over the course of the next couple of weeks. Now looking at the Climate Prediction Center, this is always kind of a good big picture idea to see what we're talking about looking forward. So in terms of 6 to 10 day temperature outlook, so later part of next week, this is exactly what I was saying, kind of this trough pattern of much cooler weather across the eastern half of the United States. In the western half of the United States, could lead on some warm final and slowly the changing pattern. Even heading into the really the 2 week period, we're still talking below average. And then beyond that, a little bit difficult to tell. But potentially a little bit warmer winter. We'll see what particularly happens. But all in all, I would expect the temperatures are going to cool off quite a bit as we head into the later part of next week. Some models are flirting with the idea of some flurries potentially behind that cold front. I don't expect accumulation, certainly because the ground's still going to be way too warm for anything to accumulate. But I would not be surprised if maybe with that next system, we start talking about some wintry type precipitation. Temperatures continue to cool, we tend to get more of this dirt from some amplification of these troughs, etc. The last thing I want to look at, if we go back to the E-wall, just to take a look at some of the loss information, to get some specifics on the forecast for this weekend. So looking at the 12Z runs of the NAM. So this is going to be a little bit hard to see, I understand that, but greens are kind of 40s pushing into the 50s. So for tonight, expecting temperatures getting down into the low to mid 40s, still above average for this time of year. We expect tomorrow to be pretty warm. You can see these oranges are 70s, yellows are 60s. So again, the forecast for tomorrow, probably going to be pushing into another beautiful day, just like today. A little cool in the morning perhaps, but certainly going to be warm by afternoon and good chance plus that football green or whatever that's a little more summer-like. Heading into tomorrow night's pretty similar, but then for the day on Saturday, this is looking like a really, really nice day. Temperatures in the mid to upper 70s. Probably some light breezes going to help make us feel not hot necessarily, but I think it's going to be a great day to be outside and go fun stuff. I'm going to put it on record. I am rooting for Penn State this week because a good Penn State bodes well for a good Ohio State next week. It'll be fun. I'm excited about it. I think here's the other thing. If Penn State came in through Michigan, Ohio State, and Michigan State the next 3 weeks, they fully deserve to be in the college football playoff. There it is. I don't think Penn State, yeah. I think Penn State's probably going to not fare as well against Ohio State next weekend. But if they do, more power to them.
What's score prediction for Saturday?
This Saturday, I'd say 31-10. First half's going to be pretty tight, and then Penn State full of everything in the second half. So, should be good. All right, any other questions, anything you want to talk about? Yeah. Yeah.
For discussion, especially.
Thanks.
Yeah. Work last night, went to meetings.
Uh-huh.
Anybody's interested in finding phone line, came up with that.
For sure. Yeah, so I think, I don't know who's doing the weather briefing next week. I was gonna do a Halloween climatology, and then I realized I was a week early for that, today. October's been super warm. And the other thing, is I play floor hockey some Tuesdays with people from the National Health Service, looking for people to spend a server to get folks. So if that's something you're interested in, let me know, or let Dave know, and we can, move forward with that. All right?
Any other questions for John? Comments or criticisms?
What is some of the clear air scatterers that you were showing here? Wonderful question. So what's picked up by radar with rolls in particular, you're not getting any of the clouds. So some days you can get clouds, but the radar is able to pick up bugs and insects. Bugs and insects are the same thing. Dust, other particulates. Basically, they get wafted by these thermals. So when air at the surface warms, it rises, and you're getting bugs and other particulates that are being wafted. So it's kind of crazy to think about the number of bugs that are up in the air. And we see this ZDR pattern in the wintertime, even when there's not bugs. So that's encouraging. The reflectivity you're not going to see in the wintertime when there's not bugs, but it's really, really dry. But basically, you're picking up on bugs and other particulates in the atmosphere. Great question. Yeah.
Since that long up in September, I didn't see one market.
Absolutely. For sure. There was an interesting post a couple weeks ago in Denver of some of the ZDR signatures that kind of have angel wing characteristics, where you can kind of tell which direction the butterflies are flying. So some really interesting stuff getting into kind of bird studies of radar. There's kind of a niche field for that, which I'm kind of in, not fully in, but certainly there's plenty of people interested in that. Yeah.
Real quick, just an observation I made this morning at the good of the order. I guess next week with that big high coming in through the central and west, looks like there could be another Santa Ana wind event, some record heat in parts of California. I think I saw that the Weather Service has downtown LA getting over 100 early next week. So fire might be back in the news.
Thank you, Ben.
What's the order? What order?
Anyone else? Is that a question, Anthony? No? All right. Thank you, John. I don't know yet.